Welcome to the Builders Podcast, episode 151, Victoria Pelletier, Unleashing Potential Through Personal Branding, Resilience, and Productivity. Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube, and after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share, if we've earned it. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable from the trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Victoria Pelletier.
Very good. Happy to be here.
Welcome to the show. Victoria is a corporate executive, speaker, author. She does a bunch of things, and she's got over 20 plus years of experience and a lot to bring to the table. We are going to be talking about a variety of things, including probably personal branding, because that's one of her core things she likes to talk about and knows about and has knowledge about. But before we get into that, the first thing we like to do, especially the first time we have somebody on the podcast, is to dig into your story a little bit, Victoria, your origin story, what made you this awesome person you are today, helping people, and so what that journey looked like, your entrepreneurial journey, how everything led into that, and so with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can tell us the short version, long version, whatever you feel like today.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Matt. As I said, I'm happy to be here and chatting with you and subsequently your audience. So I'll tell you a little bit about who I am, what I've done, and then I will step back afterwards and tell you kind of my why and what's caused me to sort of drive as hard as I have. So I am a 20 plus year corporate executive. I became COO of a large private outsourcing company at age 24. I was a brand new mother. It was a stretch role for me. And ever since then, I have stayed in predominantly the B2B corporate services environment, professional services, consulting technology, and outsourcing services, with some periods of time where I focused on certain slices of that. Getting my first exec role so young, however, did come on the heels of quite a number of years of work experience. I started working at 11.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I worked in a hair salon doing everything except for hair at that point. By 14, I was the assistant manager of the shoe store I worked at while I was in high school. And then at 16, I had graduated high school and went to university and worked in a bank leading large call center operations. Got promoted incredibly quickly. And it was that experience that got me recruited directly out into that first COO role. Now, a lot of people ask me to try and explain what do I attribute my career success to, and I'm happy to share some of those things. Mm-hmm. But I said I'd go back to the origin story. People want to know, why did I start working so young? Why have I been so driven? And so for me, it comes as a result of one, being born to a drug-addicted teenage mother who was exceptionally abusive to me. Oh, wow. I am fortunate. I was adopted by a loving family, someone who knew my biological mother. So after several abusive episodes, Julie, my bio mom, would give me to this couple. And eventually the woman who became my mother asked to take me away from that. Lower socioeconomic position. My dad was a janitor, my mom a secretary. And my mom said to me, I think when I was 11, 12 years old, she said, "Tori, you need to do better than us." And for her, that meant my education, my vocation. They never had money to go for us to do vacations. I couldn't go on school trips. That's part of why I started working so early. Was I never went without food or clothing, but all the extras. But I'm going to say that, Matt, she never needed to tell me to be better than them, to do better. Because for me, although I don't know at 11 or 12, I can express it the way I can now. I was determined I was going to be better than biology, where I came from in Julie's world, and then the circumstance of my family's. So that's a big part of my why, and has caused me to drive incredibly hard to be better than. And now it's about being better than the last version of myself, me the day before. And it's also allowed me, one of the other, elements of success for me is about being incredibly resilient and learning how to deal with challenge and adversity when it comes my way.
Wow. So I mean, you kind of that's your why. That's what you what drives you. But still, like, how did because there's a lot of people that come from that background or that happens to, and they go the other direction and they
Mhm.
don't find their way through it and aren't resilient. And was there an influence besides, like, was it your new family that somebody that influenced you, or just something that was in you that just you just were, instead of something switched in you, or just maybe it's your makeup that just got you
Yeah,
going.
it's it's a great way to like think about it, and I have many times over. And this whole nature nurture kind of debate, and so for me, I think it's both. I do believe innately there is something in my DNA that has caused me to be the fighter, right? Fight or flight. I am a fighter.
Hmm.
I sign a majority of my social media posts with two tags. One of them is unstoppable. So nothing is going to prevent me from getting to the goal or objective that I've set for myself. And the other one is no excuses, which drives my children insane. But for me, what that means is actually that we have choice and how we are going to respond to things. We can't prevent, in many cases, we can't prevent the challenge or the obstacle that will come our way. Now, some
Right.
people invite drama into their lives. That's a different story. But I mean, for just the stuff that's going to happen, and I'm a deeply emotional person, so I might have an emotion immediately, anger, sadness, happiness, whatever it is, to whatever has come my way. But then I have a choice in terms of how I'm going to move forward. And so for me, I think it was a combination of the DNA, the fighter in me, with this desire to again be better than, but just I was not let anyone stop me. So I then learned, and this is the nurture part, how to move past the challenge or adversity. How was I going to deal with it? How could I develop a healthy way of being resilient to move forward?
Yeah. And then you start taking action, and you start get these jobs at a young age, and you start working, and obviously you were something about you too, that you had some talent there, and you started doing well in these areas. That's amazing. It's just always fascinating to me, because it's like I said. I mean, I've had my journey too, where I've had a lot of ups and downs, and I haven't always been resilient. Well, I mean, I guess I've been resilient, but I've failed a lot, like a lot of entrepreneurs. And it wasn't until this recent decade, that I kind of got my stuff together. But we learned from all that. But I look at myself. Like, my father was kind of in business or and stuff, and he influenced me. But I always like to look at those things, because we all start in different places, but sometimes it's not even the circumstances what drives us. It's that something in your DNA, that you're a fighter, something in your makeup.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's learnable, though, because there's a lot of people out there that don't have that. Like, how do you get somebody that to can you teach that? I don't know if
I think
it's.
there's I think there's an element, Matt, that you can. And for some people, it might actually require therapy, and that's okay.
Mm,
And therapy can come in many forms. So for me, I never, had formal therapy like with a counselor. My mom, however, was an amazing woman who she took this very broken and scarred little girl, literally and figuratively. And she was the one who helped me understand feelings and emotion and what was triggering. So, I mean, I was very much full of fear, particularly of rejection, right? If my biological mother could do what she did to me, then what about the rest of the world? That
right,
sat with me for a long
right,
time. So she was a big part of the therapeutic element of, and my ability to be self-aware, and be critical of myself and understand why. But I think for other people, that therapy can come in the more traditional way we talk about it in terms of psychologists and counselors. For some people in business, and maybe for your listeners, it's whether it's an executive coach, or in many cases, I actually just call it an accountability coach. So,
mm,
talking about being unstoppable and moving past obstacles and challenges, someone who's going to hold you accountable to developing the plan to move through that and taking action. And so, I do think there's some of that DNA bit, but I do think you can learn and you can have help to move you forward in that process.
I think probably a lot of that is who you're surrounding yourself with, right?
Oh,
I mean,
exactly.
if you get stuck and you're just surrounded by people that are negative and abusive or whatever, but you never find the light to get out of that, or because yeah, I mean, I think that's even today, like even as your life goes on, you surround yourself with positive people doing things, and like if you're in business, especially, you want to have friends in business that are excelling and working hard and are positive, and it's very easy to identify the people that aren't that. Maybe I should distance myself a little bit from them
Yep.
and hang out with these people. But well, it's interesting. So you okay? So you go through high school, and then did you go to college? Did you go to
I did. I did.
went to college? I
Yeah,
don't know
so
if you
I
mentioned that.
I skipped a couple grades, so I graduated at 16 versus 18 for most of my classmates and went to
Wow.
university.
Okay.
The yeah, sometimes this goes back
You
to
were
that
like,
again nature nurture thing because I'm like my biological mother wasn't made very poor choices. Um, However, and then I think my biological dad, I never knew him. I think he was like a taxi driver or something. So again, I'm not sure. Doesn't mean that like taxi drivers are not smart. It's just I don't know where the smarts come. Although I do know that on my bio mom side of the family, um, one of my biological aunts is works for, or I think she's retired now, but for the Betty Ford Clinic as a
hmm,
psychologist. The other one was a university professor. So clearly it runs somewhere there.
yes.
And my mom was constantly pushing me hard, hard, hard to like do better. Um, and so I actually thought I was going to be a lawyer, though. I think probably watching too much like LA Law in the 80s with my mom. That was one of her shows. That was probably what informed, my decision to be a lawyer. But what changed it for me was, as I said earlier, I became a like assistant manager of a shoe store at 14. So that was my first experience leading
Yeah,
people.
you were a
And
manager at
then,
14. You're not just
yes,
work,
yeah, yeah.
trying people's shoes on or anything.
And then I started working for a bank when I was in university in their contact center because it created great flexibility to work around my school schedule.
Hmm.
And in less than 6 months, I got promoted into a leadership role there as well.
Wow.
And I took the opportunity to do additional courses through the bank. Had my securities license. So at one point I was leading the discount brokerage side of their contact center operations, and and then they offered me an opportunity. I was planning on then going at the end of my undergrad to go to law school, and they offered me a relocation across the country for a new, more senior role in leadership. And so I thought I was just going to take a year off and do that and enjoy. But I realized, Matt, that I really did love business and the complexity. There was like very, very early days of digital transformation. They didn't even call this 25 years ago. They didn't even call it that.
Yeah.
30 years ago, maybe now. And I love that world, but I also really enjoyed the leadership aspect. And so never went to law school. And although I think I read more contracts these days than maybe I would have otherwise, but
Yeah.
I've loved it. And so that's been a little, and I've also built and bought businesses as well. So I know many of your listeners are entrepreneurs. And so I've always had that as a side hustle, some of which were passion projects that turned into full on businesses, and others were just investments. And in some cases, one, I bought a data and analytics company and as an investment, and then ended up running it as its CEO before I then sold it. So
Yeah.
I'm a intrapreneur in the large corporations I work for, but also have this great entrepreneurial spirit on the side.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting how like you can start out thinking you're going to do something with your life, and but if you're observant or you realize I don't I really enjoy this over here though. Let me explore that. Let me go in that direction. Yeah, I think it's very common with entrepreneurs too. It's like you think we tend to follow the fun, our passion, and figure out
Yes.
what's we're not like on the rails. We're just gonna go. We just want to make money. I heard that if I become a X, that I can make $1 bajillion and have a stable life. We don't. Yeah. But no, that's awesome. So and then you're buying, you're creating businesses along the way. So obviously you love business, which is good.
I do. I
It's
do.
good. And then kind of when did you? So you worked for corporations though and stuff, right? And so you had the salary, the celery. and that's stability, probably. I dabbled in a little stability for a few years, but business is not so much. When you were what was the biggest first risk that you took, like with a business, like something you just went after and burned all your bridges or whatever you did, took the
Um,
risk.
so I am um, I'm incredibly tolerant of risk. So I feel like I've always taken risk, but to your point, I have a salary and there's a safety net. So
Yeah,
you and I were joking around whether we have like the artistic streaks in us that we've tried at some point in our lives. Well, so I started acting when I was young. My mom actually put me into modeling that led its way into doing some acting. But I was very aware that that was not going to pay my mortgage. I bought my first house at 19. And so, although I was a paid actor, I worked as well, and also went to school. I bought the casting agency, the first bold move, the casting agency that was representing me. The two guys that had owned it, and I'm originally from Canada, and Vancouver is a very large market for filming. And the two guys had come from Vancouver to the Calgary, which is where I grew up, and they wanted to go back. And so I had been helping them out in educating some of the new people who were coming in because I'd taken a lot of acting classes, and so I came in and I helped them. And when I knew they wanted to leave, I thought maybe I just buy this business. So here I was at I'm not even sure if I might have been barely 20, but again I in university, working almost like full time, the little bit of paid acting gigs, and then I bought this casting agency, and so that
wow.
was my first like kind of bold move, and then I've had others since. So I will actually say, me leaving, I'd spent the longest I've ever worked at one place has been almost 6 years, and for that bank that I worked for, when I got recruited to go and be the COO for this business process outsourcing company, BPO for short, I was a brand new mother. I had just given birth to my first child a few months earlier. I was leaving the security of working for one of Canada's largest banks,
Hmm.
and where I was well respected and held a pretty good role. So I took risk in what was a more secure environment still of, carrying a salary. But that's always allowed me to do a little bit more of these riskier ventures on the side, whether it's building new businesses or acquiring some.
So you're taking calculated risk, basically, right? You're not
Yeah.
like betting the farm on and I could go, yeah. Because I mean, again, it's another fascinating aspect of people in business or entrepreneurs. I've known a lot of people who have started businesses and stuff over time, and who had a corporate job and they built this thing on the side, and then when it started making money, then or to a certain level, then they could feel comfortable. Some people just dive in. They leave
Yeah.
everything behind, or they lost their job and we're just going to start. And some people start with nothing. But that's interesting. So you have, so you're 20 years old and you're buying business for the first time, and yeah, that's unique. You were ahead of the game. Um, so how did you get? So what do you do today? How did we get where we are today? And what do you do? What are you doing exactly today?
Yeah. So
Like, I feel
my
like you're going to probably be doing like a dozen things. I just,
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So I'm actually in career transition. I made a decision to leave. I worked for Accenture, which is one of the world's largest technology and consulting firms. I left this past summer of 23, and I'm looking for the next C-suite job. I do want, and it's funny because a lot of people, as I'm in transition, are saying, "Why don't you make your like side gig your permanent one?" And per our conversation, I don't want to. I like big, hairy, complex businesses. That gets me really excited. So I want to continue to do that as either the CEO, chief commercial officer, or chief operating officer for another company, ideally smaller. I've spent the last 10 or 15 years working for Fortune 100 companies, Accenture, IBM, American Express, Aon. So I'm ready to like bring it into a smaller organization. So that's my goal. So right now I spend a lot of time networking and figuring out what that's going to look like. I do sit on a couple of boards, one not for profit and one for profit. And I am a professional public speaker and regular media guest. And so I literally just got back last night from filming. It's sort of embargoed, so I can't tell you what it's for, but this very large production video podcast series where the celebrity is actually the host and then interviews a number of us. And so doing a
Wow.
lot of things like that, that's pretty cool. And I've just written 2 books, the first of which will be published in February, and the next will come later in March, because I am not good, if I haven't demonstrated this, with being idle. So while I knew I was in transition, I had a little bit more capacity and time. So I decided to write the books. And
Why
lastly,
not?
I have a couple of coaching clients that I work with. I do a lot of coaching on personal brand and 1 or 2 people from an executive coaching standpoint.
I just sensed it. I knew that you weren't just doing one thing.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. We should be talking about productivity today. How you do all this stuff, right? I
Yeah.
mean, actually, that's a good question. Like, how do you balance, like, yeah, just how do you balance it all? Do you have, I mean, do you have a family now and a family life and kids, and or where are you in that stage of your life, and how does that map to what you're doing?
So I believe you can have it all, not all at the same time, or not without compromise and trade-offs. And so, yes, I am married. However, I had my children quite young, so I have just become an empty nester. My children are 23, soon to be 24, and the younger one is 19 and a half.
Okay.
And so the younger one graduated high school a year ago, is taking a gap year, but who knows, that could be a gap 2 or 3, but moved back to Canada to live with my older son, who was in college when I relocated back to the US. And so empty nester. So I've got a lot more time on my hands. I used to coach my kids' hockey, or my younger one's hockey team. And so all of that has gone away. So that's created capacity. But I have this saying, where there's conviction, there's capacity. And so for me, the things I maintain conviction over are things that bring me personal or professional joy or value. I'm a fitness fanatic. I work out 6 days a week. And so some of the ways I balance it all, I live by my calendar. I need to schedule everything in, and I'm okay with that. But I work out first thing in the morning, so I block my calendar so no one would book me for an early call, so that I wasn't still in my gym gear when getting back home. And then I've learned how to create these boundaries around, again, going back to personal or professional joy or value. The things that don't bring that, I say no to, or I delegate, or I outsource. So I joke when I met my husband, and it's a second marriage for me, when he moved in with the children and I had people who clean the house, and he was never like accustomed to that. I'm like, well, babe, let's be clear, like, and they did my laundry. And that was the weirder part for him. And he's like, I don't know if I want them to do my laundry. I'm like, well, let's be clear. Like, doing laundry doesn't bring me any joy. I'm like,
Right.
so we have 2 choices here. We can continue to pay the cleaners to do our laundry, or you can do them. And so now, almost 10 years later, he still does our laundry.
Nice.
So that's just a way of like,
It brings him joy, so that's what matters, right?
yeah, I don't know if you'd say it brings him joy, but he still does it.
Wow, wow. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, saying no to things, and because I run an agency. I don't do as much as you. I have a podcast. I run an agency. I run a team. I do all of that, and I think about my days. They're jam packed with things. I have my routines and schedules and stuff. But you're like next level, and
Well, because when I hear there's a lot of people who want to move out of like corporate into their entrepreneurial journey, and I hear lots of excuses. So I go back to my no excuses, and I'm like, look, there's your 9 to 5. Not that we only work 9 to 5, but just for the sake of this, there's your 9 to 5, and then there's your 5 to 9, and you choose how you're going to spend that. If you want to binge Netflix all night
right.
and not work on your passion, side project, side hustle to help it grow to a point where you could move, well, then again, that's a choice you make. So again, like let's make some choices around the things we maintain conviction around to create the capacity to be able to do it.
Yeah, and figure out what's important for you. I mean, there's things that I've had to cut out, especially as my business has grown and stuff like that. I used to, I think back, I mean, I have regrets. Like this time period, I spent way too much time, playing games or doing whatever, like I could have been working on something like that would have, furthered my life. But and so it's like, I imagine you don't have like everything you said, it brings joy, it brings, you're fulfilled, and you're not doing anything that's, I mean, you must have some things that are unproductive. Like
Oh,
you
yes.
must at
It's funny.
least like sit and
Oh,
watch
I totally.
Netflix once in a while and binge.
I do. And it's funny because when I first met my husband, I remember telling him that I'm like, I don't watch television. And I didn't have time for it. But in large part, my children were much younger. They were 13 and 9 when he first came into our lives. My ex had passed away, so I was a single parent.
Oh my gosh, sorry to hear that.
And I traveled extensively for work. And so there wasn't time. So it was the truth back then that I didn't really watch television, but now I do watch, so we have a great friend group. And so I also, one of the things that brings me joy is like going and hanging out with my friends. We do happy hour several times a week and then come back and I'm like, babe, can we put on like an episode of Naked and Afraid or the new one, the Squid Game one that's back on again? I'm like, can you just throw that on? And he's not a television watcher, but that is a little bit of my like downtime right before we're getting ready for bed.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta have that. Even if you have all this stuff, you still have to find that time.
Yeah.
Like I took up hiking this year. That's my thing. Like I'm actually just taking like every other week is my current goal to go out in the woods and go
Yeah.
hiking.
Great.
But it's like little things like that, or just having times of the week that you can, yeah, because you can be, and you can still, and you're still as productive as you are. But I think maybe you value those times a little bit more too. Like if you're more structured and like this, like I can relax because I know I did everything I could this week in other areas. Very cool. So let's actually talk. Let's pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about personal branding because I'm curious. I'm very curious. Your because this is kind of your thing. What your thoughts are about personal branding? 'Cause I'm very interested in it. I think I was just talking to. I'm gonna have a guy on the 19th or so. I'm recording it the 19th. He's an AI guy, like expert, like you. He's
Yeah.
had tons of businesses, whatever, and very, I can tell he's a very smart guy. But one of the things he's noticed, especially with AI coming into the picture, is personal branding is going to be more and more important when it comes around to content and setting yourself apart and all this stuff. So I, everyone's kind of thinking about that. But what are your kind of what angle do you come at it from helping people with personal branding?
So for me, I realized the importance of branding, and I don't know if I would have used like it wasn't my vernacular to call it personal branding 20 years ago. But when I made the shift out of banking operations into business to business professional services, where many of the ways we get our business is by responding to RFPs. Now, that's I'm a big proponent of relationship based selling. However, you're also selling to people that are part of the decision making process that you might not yet have made relationships with. But I realized that we needed to find a way to differentiate not only the company brand and standing out from our competitors, but from the commercial team who was out there, the sales and the client management team from others. So for me, I will say a significant part of my career success has been a result of building a very strong brand. This is actually probably the first time in my career I've had to intentionally be looking for a job because I am always found. But it was also my decision to leave when I left my last employer.
Right.
And what I realized is, well, this is pretty simple, but people do business with people they like and trust, and therefore they want to do business with. And I mean, COVID certainly amplified the importance of a digital profile. But I think about the last, 10 years, I've been also leading large consulting teams, and you're buying consultants who come with a certain subject matter expertise or experience in a function or a field. But there's many that do that. So how do you differentiate yourselves? So for me, where I find there's 4 parts, I think, to a holistic personal brand. And most people understand the first one, which is what is my subject matter expertise? Again, that can be a function. So the guy you're having on, that is AI. But for other people, it could be, hey, I'm a finance expert and I'm an expert in a certain field or like industry. And so again, I find that's the easy part, to put that together. And so, but that's where most people I'm going to say go wrong in their brand is they stop it there. You look at their LinkedIn profile, even the one liner that sits under your name. For many people, they just leave it as their job title in the company they work for. You are
Yeah.
more than your role in the company you work for. And there isn't a lot of loyalty in business, and people are doing. We know that people quit, not companies; they quit their leaders, and so people want to buy from people as well. So the first part is what you do, your subject matter expertise, and the experience that you've had. The next is a little bit of storytelling. Who are you as a human? What are the passions and interests that you have, the values? This is what's the hook. This gets people go, oh, like for me, I played hockey for 20 years and I was a hockey mom. And like that was a great way in business to start talking, especially as a Canadian when I was still living in Canada,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But also the values and what I stand for. So I do a lot of advocacy work around the advancement of women and the LGBT community and diversity and inclusion in general. So
Yeah.
that's something that will build connection with others. The next part is what makes you different than others. So why would I choose consultant A over consultant B? They've both got equal experience. I like this one. We've got shared interests, but maybe this other one does too. So how are they different then? So creating this, it sounds like product marketing, but the unique value proposition of you, right? Think of it as you are the CEO of brand you. And so how are you different from others? And so for me, an example of that is I operate with radical candor. I don't know if you've read the book by Kim Scott. She talks about being incredibly direct, not to be mean, but to do it from a place of care and compassion. So she shares a story. She used to work for Sheryl Sandberg, who gave her some tough feedback that she needed to hear, but it's actually dramatically changed the way she could move forward. And so I am like that. I don't tell clients what they want to hear, so they'll buy from me. I tell them what they need to hear.
Right.
But that makes me very different than others in the professional services space. And then the last component of personal brand is around your legacy and impact. What do you want to be known for? I have been very successful in business. I've got some nicknames like the turnaround queen, the CEO whisperer. I've done 18 mergers and acquisitions for the companies I've worked for, and probably another 20 for clients I've supported. None of that is going to be on a Victoria's tombstone. That's not how I want to be known. I want to be known for leaving this world in a better place than when I came into it and advocating for underrepresented groups, really caring about equality and social justice. And I also want to leverage the challenges and experience I've had to motivate and inspire people and also understand that they too can live their own version of their unstoppable life. That's the legacy I'm going to leave. So when I'm out there, both in the digital format and certainly when you meet me in person, that's the other thing. There's no different version of Victoria. I might wear inappropriate tank tops at the gym, and I'll take a selfie and put it on my private Facebook or Instagram page. I'm never afraid that if a client saw it, but that's not what I'm putting on LinkedIn. But what you will see is me talking about elements of all the things. Here's what I do, and so I'm going to share a piece on, the future of work or something on diversity and inclusion. But then I'm actually going to tell, and I'll weave in some personal stories within it, and then the other things that I do that are connected to legacy and impact. So I'd encourage your listeners to shape their brand in this much more whole person way of showing up.
So for you, is this something that happened overnight, or you sat down one evening and you sketched all this out? Like this
No,
is what I'm doing. This is my legacy. This is my story. How I'm going to differentiate myself. I got to figure it out. Okay, let's do it tomorrow. Or is that a
no,
process?
no, no, no. It is a process. Yeah, I know. So Matt, as I said, I wasn't even using the phrase personal branding 20 something years ago when I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
it. And it's been an evolution. What I do, is actually the first book that I've got coming out in not first, it'll be my second book that I've written. It's coming out, but it's the first of 2024 coming out, is on personal branding. And it's because I kept seeing people just getting it wrong. They were just doing that first part and how they were showing up. I want to help people get to a strong personal brand faster than I did. And so no, it didn't come overnight. It took years of evolution to be able to articulate it the way I do now.
Right.
And what I would also say is it you will need to pivot and change as you evolve and grow. And your goals and objectives change, who you want to be, what you want to be known for are going to change. At 20, I could not have articulated the legacy as I can now. I don't think I had it. I just
Yeah.
wanted to be successful in business. And then as I achieved more of that success in business, I realized like, stature and compensation was nothing to do with how I define success anymore for myself. It was something very, very different. So it's going to evolve and change, but start now. So like my older one who's come out of college, I'm like, buddy, you need to set up a LinkedIn profile. And he's like, oh, mom, that's for old people. I was like, well, dude, those are the old people that are going to be hiring you.
Yes.
And
Right.
so I'm like, start now,
Yeah.
start now. And then again, evolve and change over time, but start now with the knowledge that you need to be thinking about those four things.
I think it's kind of stressful. You're trying to figure out who am I and what are all these four areas, and but yeah, it's something that's excuse me, fluid, right? It's going to change as you evolve, as your life or your career or your business, whatever changes and opportunities come, and some of those things can become a rock. Like you're always going to have kind of the same belief systems, and that probably the legacy is probably the thing that's going to be. I mean, your story will evolve too, but figuring that stuff out. That's man, like so if somebody is where do you think most people are right now? Like the average person, are they even thinking about any of these things, or have they just figured out what the title is? They haven't gotten past that.
I think most people have part one down pat,
Part
right? Like
one.
what you do, where you work, what your expertise is. And then I think they know that they need to be showing up and have a much stronger digital presence. And this is the part that actually it was the impetus for me deciding to write the book. I do some coaching on the side. In fact, LinkedIn had ranked me when I worked for IBM. LinkedIn ranked me IBM's number one social seller worldwide. That's what really
Wow.
the strength of your brand. But it's more than just your brand. It is how you engage with the network and that kind of thing. And so IBM had asked me to develop training for its other executives. So this is where much more of this started. I was kind of doing it really informally, and it formalized like 6 years ago when I was doing that. And I see people just get it wrong, in my opinion. And that's, as I said, they've got the first part down. Here's my expertise. And they know they have to do more online. So what do? They go and take their company materials and just push it out constantly. And so what I see that it's just like it's a turnoff for me when they show up in my social feed and all they're doing is like selling their company's like latest product or service. I
Right.
don't know who they are. This is
Right.
it.
See,
And so that's where I think most people are right now. They
yeah.
know they need to do more online. They just don't know how exactly.
So kind of the next step, like forgetting number 3 and 4 for a second. I mean, number 2 is building, creating your story, right? Who you are and how you show up on social media, and helping people get to know you. That's why I
Yeah.
always think like podcasts are awesome. And I don't know if even everyone that comes on my podcast sees it through my same eyes. Like I think this is an opportunity for us to get to know you. That's why I like people to tell their story in the beginning, because if I'm going to do business with you, if you're going to coach me or I'm going to buy your product or services or whatever, I want to know who's behind that company. And I may decide I don't like them, but I might decide if you got a good story that I do. But you're not going to resonate with everybody. But
Yeah.
but putting it out there and finding kind of your tribe and people that do connect with you, I think you have to do that by telling a story. Where do you start with that? Do you kind of look at what is a story? Like is the story, how personal does that get, and does, or is it your business story? Is it your origin story? What should be people be, and is it just on social media or are there other platforms? I'm throwing a few questions at you.
Yeah, you are, Matt. So I mean, what I didn't say in kind of those four areas is, I mean, there's much more to the brand around that. And so it is who is your audience?
Yeah.
I mean, I would first encourage people, why are you building your brand? I imagine for most, it's advancement in career or entrepreneurial ventures, or maybe you want to be a thought leader in the industry like a Simon Sinek or Brene Brown or Adam Grant or one of these, folks. Like what's your goal or objective here? And who is, I'll just use the phrase buying you. I mean, whether they're buying a service or they're hiring you. But, and so what kind of stories are going to resonate with that audience. So I do think you need to sit down and think about, who is my target audience here. And as you said, I'm not for I am not for everyone, so I'm we're not getting into politics, but I am, a fiscal conservative, social liberal. And my values and the things I advocate for come out very clearly in how I show up. People will make an assumption about how I might vote as a regards to that. Or the fact that, I should tell you, I'm openly queer. I was married to a woman before being married to my husband. That's not going to connect with certain people. But I also embrace my authenticity and who and how I show up.
Right.
And so going back to that, or one of those many questions you asked me, I mean, know who your audience is, and to build connection with them. And then to the other question, I think you need to find stories that represent you as your whole human. And so you don't need to be as open, as vulnerable as I am. I started sharing it because I do so much discussion around career advancement, what's driven me, all of these things. And I'm doing a disservice if I don't actually tell people where it came from. So that's why I choose to share it, but also around my legacy. And I want to help people be more resilient and overcome adversity. But then also personal stories. So I had a really tough 2022, yet I won a bunch of awards. And if everyone looked at me online socially, they'd think it was amazing. We started with my husband's serious back surgery. My father-in-law passed away. I had a horrible accident and I was in a wheelchair for months. I had my younger one has some mental health issues, and we had roller coaster there. It was not a good year, but I made a point of sharing that story. And particularly, I actually posted a horrible photo of me, coming out of the ambulance as the main picture, but just to talk about, again, resilience. That ties back to who I am. And I shared that and said, you might think it's shiny and there's a filter and you see I winning awards and all these things, but this is real life. And so I would encourage that, tell stories that are meaningful to build connection and maybe even just inspire people to want to follow or connect with you. And sorry, last question, is it off digital or no? It's everything. For me, first of all, I don't have two separate networks. I connect with people everywhere, and there's no different version of Victoria. As I said, I might not post the inappropriate tank top on my corporate public feed, but at the same time, I wouldn't be afraid if anyone saw it. So I would encourage people to be their authentic selves, IRL, as my young one tells me, in real life, as much as on the digital platforms.
That's great. Thank you my brain is there's so many things I want to dig into. Because, like I said, personal brand's amazing, and your 4 points here are amazing. We could dig into every single one. We won't, of course. Next time you come in. Okay. But no, I mean, I think about it from the perspective, I don't know how good I am at social media, but we've been doing it for a few years, and I try to think about my personal brand, and I have a little help with that. And, but part of me is not even thinking about the business aspect of it. Part of what I do, I want to give back. Right. And I feel like I want to take the lessons I've learned, and hopefully by sharing my story and what I've done and what I've gone through, that we inspire somebody. That's it. To me, that's what it boils down to for me. It's I just want to inspire somebody. That's kind of my legacy too. I want to have someday, think about, Matt, it inspired a lot of people to do more in their lives and, get on the right path and that type of thing. And I think those are all really, really good points. Well, like I said, I'm not going to throw more questions at you, and we'll be here all day. But I really do appreciate you sharing your story. And you're an amazing person. I just think about not only the productivity side of it and all the things you're doing, but just the impact you're having in the world. And I love talking to people that are having impact, and you definitely are one. You're going to inspire a lot of people. But thank you for joining us, Victoria. Until next time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was great to be here.
That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. If you want to comment on this episode's page, provide me with requests on topics for future episodes, or inquire about being a guest, please find your way to thebuilders.fm. You can contact me there or add a comment under these show notes. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you are interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.